confidential. That of securing that week and without delay the setting of a specific date for all party negotiations. This was and is the essential route to renewing the peace process. All conversations I had in that period had that object and that object only in mind. Speed in setting a specific date was important in view of the unstable situation that had been created by the revocation of their ceasefire by the IRA.
The leader of the Progressive Democrats, Mary Harney, asked if a bad precedent had been set.
Can I ask the Taoiseach if he would agree that it would be wrong for an Irish Taoiseach to get involved in lobbying anyone in relation to a vote in the House of Commons on an internal British matter? And would the Taoiseach accept that no matter how laudable the objective, that it sets a very bad precedent and damages relationships with, for example, other parties in the House of Commons?
The position is that all discussions I had in regard to all matters leading up to the summit were dictated by my overriding objective on behalf of this country, and that was the objective of securing the early setting of a date for all party talks.
The Fianna Fáil leader, Bertie Ahern, said it had been gross interference in the affairs of the House of Commons to attempt to influence the outcome of a vote there.
The Taoiseach seems to have made it very clear what his involvement in the telephone call and the knife-edge vote in the House of Commons last week. And I thank you, as I said in a weekend interview, I said, at least you tell us the truth, Taoiseach, and I assume now you are saying that you did try to interfere in the matter. Can I ask you directly, Taoiseach, did you discuss this matter with the Taoiseach when you asked John Hume to keep John Major's government in office? And I want to say you've given your views in reply to Deputy Harney of what you believe was the correctness of the decision. As far as we're concerned on this side of the House, Taoiseach, it was a gross and unprecedented interference in a vote on the affairs of the House of Commons for you to try to influence the British, or a party who was voting in a domestic British position.
He is making assumptions without foundation. Any consultations I had with Mr. John Hume are and will remain entirely confidential, and I am not confirming or denying the content of any of those consultations, and I will not be confirming or denying them. And the Deputy's attempt to put words into my mouth in this matter is entirely irresponsible on his part.
Dermot Ahern of Fianna Fáil said the conversations were not confidential as they were in the public domain.
Is it not the case that there were Labour advisers around the House saying openly that this conversation did take place and that they were extremely unhappy with it? And in view of the fact that you're not willing to confirm or deny, could I put it to you, Taoiseach, that if John Major was to interfere in the internal affairs of this state and this House, what would your attitude be?
Taoiseach.
I think that the Deputy is trying to draw me into a lot of fruitless speculation. As I have indicated to the House, the content of my consultations with Mr. John Hume are and will remain confidential.
The debate then became rowdy as Fianna Fáil Deputy Ray Burke asked the Taoiseach another question.
May I ask
this
the Taoiseach?
Technique
May I ask
drawing
the
unjustified inferences from things that I have said, which Deputy Burke is plainly learning from Deputy Ahern and Deputy Harney.
We shall have an orderly question time.
Any credit.
An orderly question time. Proceed, Deputy Burke.
Thank you very much, Count Cole. If I could proceed without interruption. May I ask the Taoiseach, did he receive an approach from the British Prime Minister to make such an approach to John Hume?
I have never received any approach from the British Prime Minister to make any specific suggestions of any kind on any matter to any other political leader. And I believe that the Deputy should accept that. The British Prime Minister acts with the highest integrity in all his dealings in this matter, and I act in all my dealings in this and other matters with a view to what I believe is the overriding interests of this state, and those interests are the restoration of the peace process.
On the order of business, the leader of Fianna Fáil, Bertie Ahern, attempted to raise the drugs haul at Urlingford, dealt with during private members' time last December. His concerns were echoed by the leader of the Progressive Democrats, Mary Harney. The Taoiseach said it wasn't appropriate for him or the Minister for Justice to answer questions about specific criminal inquiries, which were the responsibility of the Garda Commissioner. Orla Carmody reports.
Bertie Ahern raised the matter of Urlingford in the light of the government's drug trafficking bill, scheduled for the business of the House later in the day. He referred to comments made by the Taoiseach at the time.
On that particular day, I raised, last Count Corlia, the fact that nobody was apprehended on the location that these drugs were located in Urlingford, and much has been written outside this House about that. The Taoiseach made light of the remarks on that occasion, and he said, and I quote, "Obviously one would not expect to find the drug barons in the lorry, and they were not apprehended on the spot, should not warrant the significance Deputy Ahern attaches to it." As Count Corley, what I was doing that day was just raising a matter from a question that had been made known to the Fianna Fáil offices. I think it actually has a lot of significance of who drove the truck. And I would like to give the Taoiseach the opportunity, if not now, tomorrow, of answering this matter.
I want to say to the Taoiseach and the government that I too am concerned to ensure that those involved in drugs, the godfather of drugs, are apprehended. But that does not mean that anyone should break the law, that the public should be misled. And I think we should use the Minister, I just want to make my point. I think it is a serious matter. I want to deal with it as sensitively as possible, because I am concerned that there are sensitivities involved here. But that does not mean that the House shouldn't be fully informed in relation to the matters concerned, and that the Minister and the Taoiseach, given that they chose to speak about this matter in the House on the 9th of December and subsequently, I think they should use the opportunity to correct the record.
It's a serious matter.
The position is that I commented on questions that were raised at the time without notice. The question of apprehending people who are involved in the traffic of drugs is a matter of day-to-day responsibility for the Garda Commissioner. And I don't think it is possible or appropriate for the Minister for Justice or for me at the order of business here without notice to be responsible for answering specific questions about specific Garda operations.
The Taoiseach continued that it was not in the best interest of the country for the opposition parties to be attempting to make political mileage out of the situation, to which Bertie Ahern responded.
What happened at Urlingford is a matter for this House. And I asked a question following what information that I didn't know if it was right or wrong. You gave me an answer and I believed it. I think I subsequently know different. And I'm giving you an opportunity, Taoiseach, of answering it. What happened afterwards and the photo call and the great thing about the seizure and the Minister and all the rest, that's in the political domain. That's in the political domain.
The Deputy's party's spokesperson on Justice, Deputy O'Donoghue, was offered and accepted a confidential briefing on this matter on Saturday. If there was any information which the Deputy is alluding to, Deputy O'Donoghue had an adequate opportunity to pass that on when he was offered a confidential briefing by at the Minister for Justice's request, which he accepted.
Well, Taoiseach, that was up to Urlingford. What I asked you that day was about Urlingford on, and there's no confidentiality that I was told about what happened in Urlingford, or how the truck got to Urlingford, or who drove the truck to Urlingford, and how it got away from Urlingford. That is all what I'd like you to clarify, Taoiseach, because that is the question I asked you on the morning of the 9th of November.
Well, I was asked without notice on the order of business about this matter, and I expressed a general opinion that you would not normally find drug barons in the cab of a truck that was conveying drugs. I believe that that is a reasonable statement for me to make. I made that statement without any particular knowledge of the particular operation, because it is not my day-to-day responsibility to be involved or informed of day-to-day Garda operations.
Deputy O'Donoghue and several other deputies attempted to get into the debate, but were ruled out of order by the Crown Corla.
I will hear no further reference to the matter. I will hear no further reference to the matter.
The Criminal Justice Drug Trafficking Bill 1996 began its second reading in the Dáil. The bill aims to give greater detention powers to Gardaí who suspect persons of trafficking drugs. During the debate, the Minister referred to a report in a Sunday newspaper that the seizure of drugs last year in Urlingford may have been part of a so-called sting operation. The Minister first outlined the main provisions of the bill.
The measures contained in the bill will increase the powers of detention in relation to persons suspected of drug trafficking offences to provide for a maximum period of detention of up to 7 days. Provide that further periods of detention after the first 48 hours may be authorised by a court before whom the person detained must be brought. Allow for the detention of persons arrested for a drug trafficking offence where it is suspected they have concealed drugs in their persons, so-called stuffers and swallowers, in places of detention specified by the Minister. And allow members of the Garda Síochána not below the rank of superintendent to issue search warrants in drug trafficking cases where the warrant is urgently required. Allow customs officers to be present at and participate in the questioning of suspects detained by the Gardaí in relation to drug trafficking offences.
The Minister added that there were safeguards for citizens under our Constitution and under the European Convention on Human Rights. Because of these, she said a person detained must be brought before a court and given an opportunity to speak before a further extension could be granted.
The advice available to me is that to do so at the expiration of 48 hours after the arrest would not amount to a contravention of Article 5.3. At that time, the prosecution authority would have to be in a position to establish to the satisfaction of a judge, in relation to a person held on suspicion of having committed an offence, that there was a reasonable suspicion of the person having committed the specified offence, and that reasonable grounds existed for the continuance of that suspicion.
In advance of contributions from opposition deputies, the Minister referred to the drug seizure last year at Urlingford.
And in keeping with precedent set down by all previous Ministers for Justice, I do not get involved in the day-to-day operations, nor do I direct operations of the Garda Síochána. That is a matter for the Garda Commissioner. I understand, in relation to the issue raised on the order of business, that the investigation is ongoing, spanning more than this country, and that it would be inappropriate and has never been appropriate for any Minister for Justice or Taoiseach or member of this House to in any way jeopardise an ongoing investigation by seeking to get detailed operational details exposed either here or anywhere else which might jeopardise the investigation or indeed cause danger to people involved in the investigation.
In response to the bill, Fianna Fáil's Justice spokesperson John O'Donoghue said many aspects of his bill had been incorporated, but that some important ones had been left out because of intergovernmental wrangling. He said one such area not included was allowing customs officers to question suspects.
Regrettably, the Minister, in seeking to grant customs officers powers to question and detain suspects, has exacerbated rather than improved the existing situation. Section 6 of this bill demonstrates a profound lack of knowledge on the part of its authors of the realities of drug importation. The Customs Service are often to the fore in this area of law enforcement. Frequently it is they who first encounter drug smugglers. At present, they are without adequate statutory power or authority to question suspects in the first vital minutes. I had hoped that the Minister had recognised this and was moving towards providing such a statutory power. I was puzzled by her somewhat confused comments on Section 4 of my Misuse of Drugs Bill 1996. It was clear that she had failed to grasp its significance. The publication of her bill, without granting any such power to customs officers, caused me concern.
On reports that the seizure at Urlingford may have been part of a sting operation, Deputy O'Donoghue said that at the time the government congratulated Gardaí for the seizure, saying that an investigation into the haul was ongoing.
But the question which the Minister has to address in the context of media reports, and in particular in the context of the report in the Sunday Business Post last Sunday, is whether or not the seizure of drugs at Urlingford, County Kilkenny on the 8th day of November 1995 did in fact amount to a seizure, whether in fact these drugs did in fact amount to a haul, and whether or not an investigation was ongoing in relation to the drugs found at Urlingford, which the Minister said was ongoing on the 14th day of December 1995.
On the same issue, the Progressive Democrat spokesperson Liz O'Donnell had this question for the Minister.
What's so wrong in admitting that it was a sting operation designed to outfox criminals importing drugs into this country? I'm sure the public would not disapprove of such a measure. Unusual methods are necessary and perhaps essential in trying to bring sophisticated international drug traffickers to justice. Why was it not simply said that this was an elaborate, internationally organised sting operation which yielded the successful seizure and interception of a large quantity of illegal drugs? Why was it so necessary to hide the fact of the operation, and if it had to be so secret, then why the blaze of publicity and the attempt to blame a leak to the media for the premature ending of the operation? If the truth of the Urlingford seizure is that the Gardaí made a rendezvous with the ship using a disguised trawler, took possession of the drugs, landed them in Ireland and arranged that or permitted them to be brought into Urlingford, then there are very serious questions for the government. Was the largest ever drugs haul in the state landed in Ireland by the state itself? Was this a seizure in the true sense of the word, or was there a massive deception which went badly wrong? And are the people still being duped by some members of the government who are too embarrassed to reveal the truth, not merely to the people but to their colleagues in government?
At question time, the Minister for Transport, Energy and Communications, Michael Lowry, said reports that he was negotiating a £200,000 settlement with RTE as a result of a libel action were without foundation. He also said the search for a strategic alliance partner for Telecom Éireann would be concluded successfully. Jim Peavoy reports.
Minister Lowry told the Dáil he had made it one of his top priorities on assuming office to find a partner to form a strategic alliance with Telecom Éireann. He also commented on British Telecom's recent withdrawal from this process.
The strategic alliance concept seeks to enhance Telecom Éireann's strengths, in addition to addressing those areas of relative weakness in the company. I can assure the House that much other work required to allow the alliance to proceed has been done. British Telecom's withdrawal from the process is related to the company's traditional antipathy towards participation in equity-based strategic alliance processes with national operators. That company has chosen to withdraw or not participate in other processes, most notably and recently in the case of Belgacom.
But Fianna Fáil's Seamus Brennan called on the Minister to call off the search for a strategic alliance partner, claiming the process had collapsed.
I want to put it to the Minister that in his over 1 year of office now, there were 10 original starters in this race. 7 have left, and we're down to 3 in effect. British Telecom have gone, AT&T have gone, Cable and Wireless have gone, US West have gone, Ameritech have gone, GTE have gone, and Singapore have gone. We're down to, I think, just 3 groups. Due to his total inactivity on this whole area, this process has now, in effect, collapsed. And will you now do the decent thing and call off the process? Because to spend £4 million on consultants to pick one player from the remaining 3 is a farce. And the Minister knows that only one of those 3 is a serious player. And they now have the Minister and the government where they want them. So would you call off this farce, Minister, rather than let it proceed now in the silly manner in which you're planning to let it proceed? And that is mainly due to your inactivity in recent months.
I agree that your comments are farcical and silly, and I agree that you obviously are not aware of the fact that it was your government's strategy to form the strategic alliance also. You will be aware, of course, that your inaction, your total ineffectiveness in government meant that opportunities were missed. This process should not be underway at the moment. This process should have been concluded 3 to 4 years ago. This process is in the best interests of Telecom Éireann, of its employees, of the national economy, of the telecommunications sector in general. This process is underway. This process will be concluded, and this process will be concluded successfully.
Minister Lowry also replied to another question tabled by Deputy Brennan, who wanted to know who would pay for legal actions arising out of what he called the Lowry controversy of last year.
Legal proceedings have issued against me in both my ministerial capacity and my personal capacity. And there is a long-standing practice that where a servant of the public, including a minister, is sued as a result of acts carried out by him in the exercise of his functions, the state will be prepared in some cases to take on the defence of that action. The cost of any actions taken against me in my personal capacity will not be incurred by the Exchequer. However, where the circumstances of the case relate to the performance of my functions as Minister, I am entitled to seek recoupment of my reasonable costs.
However, Deputy Brennan wanted further clarification.
What I'm keen to do is just to establish that the taxpayer is not asked to pick up any tabs for any actions that you feel you have to take in your individual capacity. I just want to be clear that there's no such legal bill coming the way of the taxpayer. Just want to be certain about that.
Minister.
I've already stated that any actions initiated by me on a personal capacity are my personal affair and will be dealt with by me in the normal course.
Deputy Brennan.
Just to ask the Minister, there have been media reports that substantial offers been made to him by RTE, and some of 200,000 was in one paper. I'm just wondering if the Minister would put that rumour to rest, that it's not true.
First of all, I'm not going to involve myself or be involved in a discussion about a matter which is a private matter. But what I can say to you that the newspaper reports that you refer to are extremely speculative and without foundation.
Deputy Brennan.
Without foundation, that's noted. Do you think it's a conflict of interest for the Minister, who has some legal responsibility for RTE, to be in effect suing his own semi-state company? Is that not a conflict of interest?
You appear to be going somewhat beyond the bound of the question.
The Deputy is being extremely mischievous and I think very unfair. The reality is that you, as you have stated at the outset, or I, are entitled to take legal action when we feel there's justification for it. In this instance, I feel quite justified in initiating legal action, and I have no intention of getting involved in any further discussion on it, and I would ask you to respect that.
The Minister was also questioned about Aer Lingus. Deputy Bobby Malloy of the Progressive Democrats wondered if the £8 million cost of the airline's new logo and livery was compatible with the objectives of prudent, cost-efficient management.
Could I ask the Minister what is his opinion in relation to the recent stated, at any rate, don't know the exact figure, expenditure of £7 to £8 million on the launching of the Aer Lingus Group corporate image? The Minister will be aware of the concern and alarm among the public at such a huge expenditure so shortly after the company had received massive capital injection from the European Union and indeed from the Exchequer here.
Mr. Lowry acknowledged that the new logo had attracted adverse media comment.
I requested in my general discussions with the group as to why it was necessary, and I was informed that for marketing strategy and marketing purposes that this was a decision, that it was a decision in keeping with the company's objective of being commercially viable, and that it would pay dividends, that it was necessary, and that it was well considered, and that the board had approved it, and obviously it is a matter for the board and the management of the company to make decisions of that nature.
And that's all from this edition of Oireachtas Report. Until our next report tomorrow, goodbye.